to this iteration of the virtual field trip. Today we're going to be focusing on the change of seasons because it is a lovely time of year. It is officially fall. We just had our first harvest moon. So yeah, welcome to Virtual Field Trip. My name is Emily. I'm going to be the host for today. I work with Rural Action, and we have some friends in the field today. We have Darcy and Mia out at the ridges in Athens, and we'll have our friend Maggie at her house to do some modeling of the Earth's tilt. So just to get us started, I'm curious, what is you all's favorite part of fall? What is your favorite sign of fall? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself by using the button in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen that looks like a microphone. And if you would, when you're done talking, if you can just re-mute yourself, that way you don't overlap with other people talking.
Halloween.
Halloween.
The
Oh.
weather cools down on the cool leaves.
Halloween.
Lots of Halloween fans. What's your favorite sign in nature of fall?
The leaves.
They're very pretty, aren't they?
Leaves.
One of my favorite parts.
We like the leaves.
I like the smell.
The smell, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
It does have like a distinct crisp smell. Yeah, that's one of my favorite aspects too. Piper, is your hand raised?
My favorite is because it's my papa's birthday.
That is a very nice time, yes. Anyone else? Favorite signs of fall?
I have my sister's and my dad's birthday.
Big time of year for birthdays. Lots of people born in fall. My favorite sign of fall is probably, like someone said, the cool mornings. I really like waking up before like 9 a.m. and going on a walk, and you can feel the little bit of chill on your cheeks. You can wear a sweater, but then in the middle of the day, it's still in the 60s. You can wear a t-shirt. So I like that you can have both the cold and some of the warm in the same day. You get that variety. But I also really love apples. I think that's one of my favorite signs of fall because my mom and I make applesauce together. Anyone else? Any other signs of fall that people really enjoy?
I like pumpkins. I like to go pumpkin picking.
I like when we go to a pumpkin festival.
I also enjoy pumpkin picking and might get to do that next weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. All right, well, we have some friends with me today that can show you some signs of fall and why we have the season of fall. So I think first we're gonna go over to our friend Maggie, who is in her garage to model the Earth's tilt.
Yes. So here I have the globe, right? And we have the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And then this red line is the equator. And so we're going to be focusing on seeing the northern and southern hemispheres. But one of the first things I noticed about the globe is that it's not standing like me straight up, but instead it's standing at this tilt. And so we're going to see how this tilt really affects the amount of sunlight you get in the northern and southern hemispheres as the Earth travels around the globe.
The sun.
The sun. So, Mom, will you turn off the light?
This light?
That light. So we're starting here. And does it look like the northern or the southern hemisphere is getting more light?
The southern.
The southern.
Let's see. So here's the north.
At it from the side, we could see a little better. It's kind of, yeah, like that. Thank you.
So which part, the top or the bottom, seems to be getting more light?
Top.
The top. So the northern hemisphere is in summer, and Ohio is in the northern hemisphere. So in this part of the year, we would be experiencing higher temperatures and longer days and more sunlight. So then we're going to travel. And now we are on the other side of the sun. And which one does it look like? The top or the bottom is getting more sun?
Bottom.
Bottom.
The bottom,
Bottom.
yeah.
The
So
bottom.
Ohio is in the north in the top. Are we gonna be in winter or summer here?
Summer.
Summer. Definitely.
So we're getting less sunlight. Is that winter or summer?
Winter.
Winter.
Yeah.
Winter.
So we can see how this tilting effect led to either more or less sunlight, because over here I'm tilted away from the sun, but when I was here I was tilted towards the sun. All right, Emily.
Thanks, Maggie. That was a really cool way to see why seasons happen and why some days are shorter and some days are longer. Winter is one of my least favorite seasons because there's so little sunlight. You know, you wake up at like 7:30 in the morning and it's dark. And then by the time you get home from school or home from work, it's dark again. So you spend most of your day doing things, whether for school or for work, inside. And by the time you're done, it's dark outside. So it's kind of hard for me to enjoy winter because of the lack of sunlight. But that also means I really love summer because I can wake up at like 6:30 in the morning and have sunlight all the way until like 9:30 p.m. And like Maggie said, that's just because our part of the world in Ohio is tilted towards the sun. So we're getting more sunlight during that time of year. All right, so now I think we're gonna move to our friends out in the field, Darcy and Mia, to show us some signs of fall out at the ridges.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. So one of the big questions of fall is, why do the tree leaves change? And we all learned, okay, we just learned from Maggie and the globe that the fall is all about starting to get less sunlight each day. That's what's changing the seasons, is that the earth is tilted away, we have less sun. So why might having less sun matter to trees? Any ideas?
The leaves get and
Because trees need sunlight and water to grow.
Trees do need sunlight and water to grow. That's true. They need water just like we need water to keep everything moving and be part of their bodies. And what do they use the sunlight for? Does anyone know?
They use the sunlight
for food.
to like give vitamins to them.
Yeah, the sunlight is like their food. It's what gives them energy so they can be alive and move. They turn the sunlight into sugar. And the way that they do that means that they take in a little bit of air. They take in, people hear like how trees take in carbon dioxide and put out oxygens. A lot of people have heard that. So the reason they do that is part of the process. They need all that air in order to turn the sunlight into food. So they care about the sun. Well, but if we're thinking about why leaves change color, I guess another question is, why are leaves green to begin with? Any ideas about why they're usually green before they change?
Because they're not dry, and the chlorophyll is still in them.
Yeah. So leaves have this thing in them called chlorophyll that is green. And that's the part that does the work of making sunlight into food. So come on over here. I'm not sure how we'll be able to see this. Actually, I might just take this from you. Thank you. Okay, so I have a little bit of an experiment here, and we'll see if it shows up on the camera at all. But if you put, actually, I'm gonna move into a little sunnier spot so that it's in here. So when a plant photosynthesizes, if you put it in water, you can see that it makes little bubbles. It's breathing, and part of, as it's doing that work of turning the sunlight into food, can you guys see the little bubbles on the tips of the moss in here?
Yes.
You can? Oh, that's great. I wasn't sure if it's easy to see or not. So that is a sign that it's taking in oxygen and air, and all that green chlorophyll in the moss is in fact doing its job and making food. Now let's look at some other things. I have some other things in here that don't have any green in them anymore, like this leaf. If I look at this, it's in the sunlight, I see some water, but I don't see any bubbles. So that's how I can tell, oh, this leaf is not photosynthesizing anymore. It is not making food out of sunlight anymore. We also grabbed some of these earlier. Does anyone know what these are?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Yeah, they're mushrooms.
They're mushrooms, and I think that the type of mushroom they are turkey tails.
They do look a lot like turkey tails. They've got that shape. It's a little different color, so I'm not 100% positive they're turkey tails, but they could be. So what do you all think? Looking at this mushroom, actually this mushroom has little moss on it too, but looking on the main part of the mushroom, do you think that mushrooms get their food from sunlight?
I don't
No,
think. Nope.
I don't think so. No,
Well,
I think they get their food from the soil.
Any other ideas about where they might get their food?
Shade and dead chaff.
Yeah, you often find mushrooms on dead things decomposing. So one way I can tell, right, is this mushroom is not green, it's brown. So it doesn't have chlorophyll in it. So it doesn't have what it needs to photosynthesize. When I hold it under the water, there's a few little bits of dirt floating past it, but it's not bubbling. It's not photosynthesizing. So we have our nice green plant, our nice green moss is sending up some bubbles as it photosynthesizes in the sunlight, but our yellow leaf doesn't have any green chlorophyll, can't make any food. Our mushroom doesn't have any chlorophyll, and it can't make any food. So that is some of my evidence to you. If you want to try this at home, you just need some water, and putting a little baking soda in it helps, and you can do your own experiment to see what does not start photosynthesizing. So we have our first step. Why are trees green in the summer? So they can make food. Now, winter is coming, and what is changing outside that might make it difficult to keep keeping those leaves alive?
The weather, it's getting cold and less
Getting colder.
Yeah, it's getting cold.
Got no sun.
And there's not a lot of sun. So basically, to keep those green leaves alive and full of water and keep that chlorophyll working takes so much energy. They need lots of water, they need lots of sugar. But now it's like they've had to go on a diet. The sun is only out until like 5 o'clock instead of in the summer, it might be out until 9 o'clock. So they're not getting as much food. And it's cold, so they don't work as well. And their water, they're really thirsty all the time because water freezes in winter and they can't suck it up anymore. So basically, to keep these nice green leaves alive, it takes more energy to make the green and make the chlorophyll than they can get from the sun now. So they just stop making the green. And as the green disappears, it leaves behind yellows and reds, which were actually there all along. So if you have a leaf like this, you see there's still a little bit of green left on it. This yellow and orange was there all year long, but now it just doesn't have enough energy to keep making the green, so it stops making the green, and now you can see the colors that were hidden underneath the whole time. Yeah.
I know one thing about why trees don't need as much food and sunlight in cold weather.
What is that?
Well, in the summer and spring, it has green leaves, and those green leaves help the tree get enough food and water to store for winter, like a hibernating bear.
Bear. Yeah.
Hey, Darcy, you got muted somehow.
Okay. So, like looking at a tree like this, sometimes people might look at it and think, it's totally bare, it must be dead. but it's not dead. It just, this tree loses its leaves really early, earlier than all the other trees. And it also puts its leaves out before all the other trees, which is kind of clever because if you think about spring, all the other trees are still bare. If this tree puts its leaves out first, it gets all the sunlight without being shaded at all. But it's still alive, right? It's just dormant. It's hibernating like a bear over the winter, and it'll start doing things again when it's warm. And it's left a present for itself, preparing now while it has lots of energy. It's good to plan ahead if you know you're going to be tired to do things that take a lot of energy when you have it, right? So you come a little closer, Mia.
Darcy, can you mention what type of tree this is again, just in case we were muted?
Yeah, this is a Buckeye tree. So if you've ever said, "Go Buckeyes," you're celebrating this beautiful tree right here. And I might have to use a different example tree because I'm not as tall as I thought I was. Let's go look at a different tree. All trees do this. This is one of my favorites. It's a dogwood tree. So can you come up really close so we can look at this little bud at the end? Is that clear? So this tree, it would take, if you think about it, in springtime, at the very end of winter, if they don't have any leaves, they don't have any way to get energy, and it takes a lot of energy to make this. It's kind of like when, if anyone's ever said like, you're a growing boy, so you need to have a nice big meal, right? These leaves need to eat in order to have enough energy to grow these buds. So they actually, this is going to be the flowers and leaves next year in the spring. They already make them now because they know they won't have the energy to do it in winter without having the leaves on. They've made it ahead of time. And sometimes, let me see, this works better in the spring when they've gotten a little plumper. But you can even, and I don't do this to many trees because they need them, but I can show you, you can even kind of break them open and see, I don't know if you can see on the phone, these little tiny pieces. Those are going to be like the petals of the flower next year inside. Sometimes you can see tiny microscopic leaf shapes that are going to come to be in the spring. So tree buds, each tree has its own unique bud. Each one looks different. It's part of how you can recognize them in winter, these little baby leaves they've stored up while they have the energy. Oh, here's the Buckeye. Here's another one. The one that we showed you that was bare, doesn't have any trees left. It has a huge bud. I really like it. It's kind of pointy at the end. Well, does anyone have any questions so far? Thoughts?
How does a tree stay alive so many years?
That's a good question. And not all trees do make it. Let's go over here. So if you look up here, you see there's a big opening in the sky. And this is a good place for new trees to come up. Why might it be nice for a baby tree to be planted in an open spot like this in the forest? Any ideas?
It has plenty of room to grow.
Yeah, it has more room. There's not as much competition from the big trees, right? Because the big trees are strong. They're going to take the space. And there's lots of sunlight. If you're underneath a big tree, it's shaded. There's all these trees taller than you that grabbing all the sun before you can get it. And you're this little thing down here. But here, there's a nice opening. You can get some sunlight. And as you can see, oh my gosh, there's so many things growing. So weedy. All these short plants. A lot of them are trees. Some of them aren't. But like, this is a little baby tree. And this is a little baby tree. But as you can see, they're so close together. They don't all have room to become a big, wide, fat tree. They're so crowded. So some of them are not going to live a long time. They're not going to live long enough to be big. But one or two of them will get the advantage, maybe get a little more sun, get a little bigger, and it will continue to grow while the other ones die back. And of course, like I said, someone compared it to a bear hibernating. The trees don't totally go asleep or they do go to sleep, but they don't die in the winter because they still have a little bit of energy in them and they store it down in their roots. So by leaving it, oops, I got torn. By leaving it under the ground in their fat roots, like has anyone ever eaten a carrot or a potato? That's that plant doing the same thing. All of that tasty food that we eat and turn into food for ourselves is also food for the plant in the spring. So that's one way that they're able to stay alive through tough times. It's a great question. I don't know if I fully answered it. I don't know if I fully can tell you why trees live so much longer than other plants, but but they do. I'm also thinking about one kind of tree whose leaves don't change or fall off in fall. Can you all think of a tree like that? Let's go look for one.
Pine trees.
Pine trees.
Pine trees.
Pine trees. Pine trees.
Y'all.
You
So
got
not
it.
just pine trees, but any evergreen tree. A pine is one kind of evergreen tree, but there's also firs and spruces and cedars, hemlock trees. If you've ever been to Hocking Hills, it's full of hemlock trees. Let's go find one. Here's one white pine. No needles nearby to look at though. Let's see. Let's go a little further. I think there's one down here.
While you're walking, Darcy, we got a question in the chat. How do you know if a tree is in the dying process or it's just hibernating?
Ooh, great question. Does anyone have any ideas about that? I'll take a look over here to see if I can find any examples.
I think that how you tell a dead tree from a hibernating tree is the dead trees might have a lot of fungus growing on them, or they're tilted in a way.
Totally. Those are good ideas. Let's take a look over here at this pine tree. So this piece is on the ground, right? And so obviously it's dead because it's on the ground, but also the bark is falling off of it. Lots of bugs and birds have gotten into it. They started tearing it apart. But another thing you might see is, so have any of you ever gathered sticks for firewood?
Yeah.
And what do you want? What makes a good, like what kind of sticks do you want for firewood? And there's another kind you like don't want to burn. Like how can you tell?
You want
You don't want them
wet
to burn.
sticks.
You want them to be dry.
Yeah. Yeah. So if on a tree a limb is dry and snaps, so this tree is actually alive, but it has a dead branch on it. And you see it just snaps off right away. And look at the tip of this twig. There's something missing that would be there on a living tree that we looked at a minute ago. Any ideas what I'm?
Leaves.
Leaves.
What if it was winter and it didn't have a living leaf? It would still have a bud, right? Remember the buckeye tree we looked at, that big fat bud on the end? It still has a bud that will become a leaf in the spring. Then you know it's alive. But if there's nothing at all, it can't make those. It's dead. And it's done. So it snaps. But let's see, this tree is alive. And it might have some branches on it that are dead, but it's really like, it's kind of hard to break. It's kind of bends a little more. If you tear it apart, you can see it still has like, it's a little green on the inside of the bark. And this one too. This is a maple tree. They have a little small pointy bud at the end. It wouldn't have been able to make that if it was dead. So any tree might have a few dead branches. The pine trees often have like dead branches at the bottom because those branches can't reach any sunlight and they don't bother keeping them alive. But if you look up top, you see it still has needles. So sometimes it takes a little investigation. Are there buds? Are the branches still strong? Is just part of the tree dead? Like, is it like needs a haircut or some other part? That's a great question. Other questions?
How do you know if like a plant needs trimmed?
Well, wild plants don't necessarily need to be trimmed. So like this tree is kind of trimming itself. That's why these branches on the bottom died. It wants to put all its work into keeping the branches at the top alive where it can reach the sun, and the ones down here take more work than they're worth. So it's pruning itself and letting these branches fall off. For other kinds of plants, that's really kind of a matter of choice for your garden. Like sometimes if you trim it back, it can grow back a little healthier. I don't know if that really answered that question, but it's kind of a, a nuanced one. With fruit trees, we do it just kind of to, if it looks like too scraggly or overgrown, or if it's getting too tall, we kind of do it in a way to make it more convenient for us to pick. So I couldn't reach up to the living pine needles, but there are some dead ones. Oh, here's a decent one. What are some ways that this is different from what we call these deciduous leaves or broadleaves? How are needles different from a deciduous leaf? Anything?
Because one's a leaf and one's spiky and not a leaf.
Yeah, very different shapes. They kind of feel different too. Have you ever felt them? You feel how they kind of feel like maybe a little like tough or coated even?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the biggest problems in winter is kind of like a drought. Like I said, the water is all frozen, and it takes a lot of water to make a leaf like this. So they do a few things. They coat these needles in a waxy cover, and that helps keep water from escaping, has a little more control. It's like if you put out a jar of water but cover it with plastic wrap, then no water is going to evaporate out. And it's also because it's a long, skinny shape, it has less surface area that water can evaporate from. So it's the same thing, like if you have a wide, shallow puddle, it is going to dry up in the sun pretty quickly. This is like the wide, shallow puddle. And this is like a deeper well. The sun can only reach a little bit of it at a time, so less water evaporates. Surface area is a little hard to explain right here, so maybe but the idea is that this shape helps it keep water in and being covered in wax, and it's kind of effective because that means this tree every year has to make new leaves, has to put all the energy into growing this. But this tree with the pines, it can just make new needles every few years. So it's pretty efficient that way. It might even still be able to get a little sunlight in winter. Yep. Okay, any other questions?
No.
I don't think so.
Cool, thank you.
That's good because it's 11 o'clock, Darcy, just a heads up.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining today. I encourage you to go outside and take a closer look at your trees. Yeah, like which ones are dying, which ones are starting to go dormant or hibernate. Look at those little buds at the end and try to think about what those leaves might look like when they come out in the spring, and enjoy the fall weather.
Thank you all for coming, and happy birthday to all those people that said their favorite part of fall was their family's birthdays. Yeah, you get to spend time outside. I hope you get to apple pick and pumpkin pick and explore trees and pick up dying leaves and make art out of them. Whatever you want to experience fall. All right, hopefully we'll see you all next week for another virtual field trip.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.